What's going on, guys? Sharpshot here. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. So today's video we'll be looking at what killers work best with the perk Save the Best for Last. Save the Best for Last is a Myers teachable that allows you to gain stacks whenever you hit a non-obsession survivor, and each stack gives you a 5% cooldown reduction on your successful basic attacks, up to a maximum of 40%. And here's the stats of how long the cooldown is for how many stacks you have. So as you can see, once you have the max stacks, it's actually a pretty big reduction. But the catch of this perk is that if you hit the obsession with a basic attack, you lose stacks, and if the obsession is dead, then you can't gain or lose any more stacks. So today's video we'll be looking at each killer and assessing whether they're great, good, okay, or bad with this perk. So I'm going to be breaking the killers apart by 4 tiers. The bad tier is killers whose powers work completely against Save the Best for Last. So in this tier you won't be getting any value out of Save the Best for Last. The okay tier are killers who are mostly M2 reliant, meaning that in a trial you'll be using your M2 to hit survivors more often than your M1. But these killers do have a regular M1, so you could still get value out of Save the Best for Last and use the M2 on the obsession, but you won't be getting as much good value with this perk, because if you aren't using the M2 more than the M1 on these killers, then you aren't using their powers to their full potential. So in this tier, Save the Best for Last won't get as much value, but you don't lose any stacks to the obsession. The good tier are killers who are purely M1 reliant, meaning that in a trial they do all of their survivor hits with their M1, which is great because that's what Save the Best for Last is for. It's for the basic attacks, but they don't have an M2 to hit the obsession with, so you're going to have to either avoid the obsession or lose stacks. So in this tier you get tons of value with Save the Best for Last, but you may lose some stacks to the obsession. And finally, the great tier are killers who are M1 reliant but also have an M2 that you can easily hit the obsession with, so that you don't lose your Save the Best for Last stacks. So in this tier it's the perfect combination where you're going to get tons of value with the M1s, but you also won't lose any stacks because you can easily use the M2 on the obsession. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the video. Starting with the bad tier, we have Nurse and Blight. Nurse has a blink fatigue after a successful attack, so you won't be getting any advantage from the Save the Best for Last stacks because the fatigue won't change. Similar to Nurse, after Blight uses a lethal rush, he has a fatigue cooldown, so you won't be able to get any value from the Save the Best for Last stacks. Moving on to the okay tier, we have Billy, Huntress, Bubba, Legion, Plague, Oni, Twins, Trickster, and Artist. You should be doing most of your damage with these killers as M2s, but if you're struggling with those, you can use your M1 and then use their M2s on the obsession. A perfect example of this is with Billy. You should be using Billy's chainsaw to primarily hit the survivors, but if you're struggling with the chainsaw, you can use his M1s and then only use the chainsaw on the obsession to save your stacks. All of the killers in this tier work in that same way, with the exception of Oni. When you're outside of his Blood Fury, if you see the obsession, you're just gonna have to not chase them to save your stacks, because the only way you're gonna be able to down the obsession is one-shotting them in his Blood Fury. And with the twins, if Victor is on cooldown and you encounter the obsession as Charlotte, you should avoid them until you can chase them with Victor again. Moving on to the good tier, we have Trapper, Wraith, Myers, Hag, Doctor, Freddy, Clown, Spirit, Ghostface, Pinhead, Onryo, and Dredge. Whew. All of these killers literally only have an M1 to hit the survivors with. All of the M2s are purely support. They don't actually do damage themselves, unless you count Trapper's traps doing damage or Pinhead's Engineer's Fang add-on doing damage. Outside of those two exceptions, none of the M2s do damage. It's only the M1s that do damage for these killers. So if you do encounter the obsession with these killers, you're either gonna have to avoid them until you have to down them, or you're just gonna have to accept losing stacks on them. But I would probably do the first option and avoid them until they're the last survivor and you have to down them. And a little tip to avoiding the obsession: if you look at the icons for each survivor on the left hand side, you'll see a survivor with bones around them. That means that they're the obsession, and if you ever get in a chase with them, you'll see that the little bones start moving back and forth, meaning that you're chasing the obsessions. If there's only one Fang in the trial and then the obsession, just don't chase the Fang, but that tip is just better if it's, say for example, 4 Dwights and they're all wearing the same outfit. You'll be able to still tell which survivor is the obsession while you're chasing them. So if you see the bones move, just stop chasing that survivor. They're the obsession. Finally, moving on to the gray tier, we have Pig, Demo, Deathslinger, Pyramid Head, Nemesis, and Wesker. All of these killers are M1 reliant, but have an M2 that you can hit the obsession with to save your save the best for last stacks, which makes them the perfect candidate and the best killers to use save the best for last on. And just to quickly go over how each killer in this tier can hit the obsession and injure them with their M2 to save your save the best for last stacks. Pig can simply ambush the obsession. Demo can shred attack the obsession. Deathslinger is a little complicated, but you could shoot the obsession and then break the chain and that'll still injure them. It just won't down them, so if you're gonna down them, you're just gonna have to wait till later. Pyramid Head, you could sword swipe the obsession. Nemesis, you could simply whip the obsession. And Wesker, you can hit the obsession with your virulent bound. So yeah guys, those were all of the killers and how good or bad they are with save the best for last. Just to end off the video, here's a tier list summarizing where each killer lies in the certain tiers. And just for some closing thoughts, any killer that's in good or great, I would actually recommend using save the best for last on. Honestly, even the killers in the okay tier, if you have a niche build centered around save the best for last stacks, you can still get some good value with it. The only killers you really just can't use it on is Nurse and Blight. So yeah guys, that's been the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new. This has been Sharpshaw, and I will see you guys in the next video.